Hello. Today I have the immense honor to present to you a unique person, Natalia Ladini, author of The Matrix of Destiny Purpose Diagnosis Method. Natalia, it is a unique opportunity to meet you. Please tell us about the history of the method, about yourself, about how you came to this. This is a question which I am sure concerns many people, and the method is gaining momentum. It is very popular across all social networks. We constantly hear about the Matrix of Destiny, about how it helps people, but many do not even know that it has an author.
Yes, Alyanochka. Hello. I am very glad to be here with you, in your studio. Of course, The Matrix of Destiny is my beloved creative, spiritual child, which came to me as its author, its original source. And this is an amazing story, very unique. Of course, it began from my earliest childhood, when I started to feel myself as some kind of unusual child. I always wanted to bring some benefit to animals, to people, to this world. I thought about this since my earliest childhood. And once, in kindergarten, when we were asked, this was in the Soviet Union, during the time of the Soviet Union, when we had some kind of morning event, and the teachers asked us, "What do you want to become? What do you want to be when you grow up? What profession?" And children came out and told "I want to be an engineer," or "I want to be a doctor, I want to be a cosmonaut." I came out, I remember this moment very well. I came out onto the stage, looked at everyone, and raised my hand like this. I said, "I want to have a magic wand in my hands, and I want to wave it. I want to become a sorceress when I grow up." And I waved this magic wand and wished for peace throughout the entire world, so that there would never be war. Such were the thoughts of a 5-year-old child. To be a sorceress, to wave a magic wand, so that there would be peace on the planet, and never any war. And everyone looked at me very strangely, smiling. After that, they jokingly called me the sorceress. "Oh, this is our sorceress." And so I lived my entire childhood as this sorceress, with this state of being a sorceress. Then, when youth arrived, I understood that I was somehow different. Well, in what sense different? We had career guidance in school, they tried to. Well, not exactly tried, but oriented us toward various professions. Again, chemistry, chemists, doctors.
Doctors, teachers.
Teachers, yes, something like that. And there were radio assemblers. I don't know why, but I somehow wanted to become a radio assembler. That is, assembling some complex circuits. Later, I thought, there must have been something in that, perhaps some connections, physical or energetic, which were already interesting to me back then. And from that moment, I began to study physics intensely, the laws of physics. I understood why fate had led me precisely to such a profession initially. Because physics and mathematics, these are numbers. And again, physics is the interaction of energies. You could say it's all about the same thing, about the structure of our world, how we influence this world, how the world influences us, how energies flow and intersect. And from an energetic perspective, I've always been deeply fascinated by the laws of physics. But here's the thing, I was living in the Soviet Union, and at that time, I couldn't access other kinds of knowledge anywhere. The laws of bioenergy, the laws of magic, or, let's say, the principles of energy, interaction, things like that. This kind of knowledge was still beyond reach, considered almost forbidden or esoteric, and you had to somehow find it on your own. There was no such thing as walking into a bookstore and finding shelves full of books on bioenergetics, metaphysics, and so on. None of that existed. Of course, there was no Google or Yandex either. No internet to simply search and instantly get the information you needed. So, back in those distant times, I began exactly with physics. And naturally, where there's physics, there's also mathematics. That's when I realized why fate led me into this profession first. Because physics and math are made of numbers, again. And physics is, essentially, the interaction of energies. And all this together, essentially, is now the matrix of destiny method. The same numbers, yes, and the same metaphysics. I now call it not physics, but metaphysics. Therefore, the method consists of 22 energies, which, within the matrix, are arranged according to the sacred square, a square within a square, following sacred architecture. And we begin from this point, starting from this, and begin to read further certain fateful programs, destinies, moments embedded within us from our birth date. Thus, the matrix itself is structured. But again, returning to my past, to the time when I still did not know the method, and from the moment when I wanted to study physics and mathematics, essentially, the interaction of numbers and energies, in this way, from this, perhaps, everything began. Well, of course, from the perspective of science, this was not interesting to me. It was interesting to delve deeper into metaphysical processes. I felt as if something was missing, some magical key, perhaps that very magic wand when you wave it and bring some benefit to people. I understood that my soul's mission since childhood, a method or some way to bring benefit to the world, to bring benefit to many people. And my, let's say, movement toward studying physics and mathematics simultaneously, they did not ultimately culminate in success, because after some time it became uninteresting to me, and I realized this was not mine. And when I realized that something was not mine, I could not engage in something I did not love. This, incidentally, distinguished me since childhood. This inner rebelliousness, I now understand it as the first energy of a pioneer person who will never engage in something that is uninteresting to them. After some time, it became uninteresting to me. I realized I was not finding some deeper part of myself there. And so I abandoned this, my studies, and went into some kind of inner search of my own. By this time, I had formed a family. My daughter was born. I became fully occupied, immersed in this. I immersed myself, let's say, into motherhood, immersed myself into the state of being a wife and mother. And this life process, this stage of life was very important to me at that moment. And yet questions about realization, they remained. They lingered somewhere off stage, constantly humming in the background, constantly nudging me. Where will you go? What will you actually do next in life? And since this was the Soviet era, perestroika, the 90s, the Soviet Union was already collapsing, and there was some kind of hopelessness, uncertainty, this chaos around, you know. And I understood that even the best thing was to retreat into my burrow, so to speak, to retreat simply into housewifery, into motherhood. And this was some period of time when you could simply think, take some time out from society, from some further self-realization, and simply think about yourself, think about life. And so it happened with me for some time, but life did not allow me to sit long like this, shut away in the role of a housewife. And still, it began to give me, you know, magical, as they say, kicks or some lessons and tasks. If they were merely signs, they were serious, good falls. It began to pull me by my health. Situations began to shake me up, to make me wonder, who am I? I later, of course, decoded all this, but at that time it was very unclear to me how, as a young girl, a woman, why did I, for example, have no strength? Why was I falling ill so often? I began simply, to wither away. A state in which everything seemed normal and family, motherhood, and everything seemed provided for, well, material security, everything normal. But again, yes, the material level does not bring satisfaction to the soul. Yes, many people who begin to search for themselves know this. They know that their inner spiritual state constantly draws them toward development, draws them toward searching, who am I? And certainly, the material world alone does not bring us satisfaction. So it was with me. And I began seeking ways out of my already somewhat enfeebled state. I truly simply lost energy. At some point, all strength simply vanished. Energy disappeared. They began taking me to doctors. Naturally, I began visiting official medicine, taking tests, as usual, examinations, and so on. And some doctors simply looked at me. You're fine, dear. Everything is perfectly normal with you. Why are you simulating? What is wrong with you? Why do you feel this way when everything should be normal for you? And I could find no explanation whatsoever, because there was no knowledge of bioenergetics. And at some point I was walking like this, but I always knew God exists. This always lived with me, yes? I knew God exists, and that God is some universe, some higher self. I never typified God with religions. I always felt God as a certain wholeness of creation, which created this entire world, and which is diffused throughout the universe, as a certain higher predestination for everything and everyone. And therefore I addressed the Creator directly and asked why I was in such a state. Even in those times, I had learned to ask the universe, to pose questions. That is, it is not necessary to go to someone and ask a question, but purely you yourself, inwardly, to the universe. I began asking questions. Why is all this happening to me? Why do I have no strength? Why am I in this depressive state when everything in my life is good? Perhaps viewers are familiar with this state, when a person seemingly has everything, yet something is missing. They cannot find themselves and begin to suffer, languish, fall ill, and so on. And people around them say, "What more do you need? Everything is fine." Seemingly, yes. Just live and rejoice. But the person cannot rejoice. The person, as it were, fades away. The inner fire fades. And this began happening to me then. The inner fire simply began to fade. And I walked like this, asking God, what is happening to me? Perhaps many are familiar with this state, this feeling of hopelessness, when you simply look up at the sky, into nowhere, and pose these burning questions of yours. And I imagine I was walking and bumped my eyes, bumped into a pole, and on the pole was an announcement that some healer, bioenergotherapist, in some kindergarten, was holding appointments, seeing people. I tore off this announcement and thought, I will go to her. For some reason, I very much wanted to meet this woman, although at that time I still had no concept of healing, bioenergetics, and so on. I came to her, found her, arrived at her place, and right at the threshold she told me, "Child, you have absolutely no energy left. How are you even still walking?" She simply charmed me from the threshold, because I thought, how many doctors had dismissed me? Well, jokingly speaking, yes, but this woman immediately diagnosed me right at the threshold. I had only just entered her place. She said, "How are you managing? Do your legs still carry you? Your energetic field is completely eaten away." way. At that time, I understood nothing about energetic fields, whether they could exist, not exist, or, as she expressed it, be completely depleted. But I simply trusted. And she began conducting sessions with me. She said, "You need to come to me for about 10 sessions." She said, "I won't manage you in 2 or 3 sessions." She said, "It will be important for you to attend 10 sessions with me." I said, "Okay." She sat me down on a chair and simply said, "Close your eyes." Did not even turn on any relaxation music. Simply, using grandmotherly, grandfatherly methods, she began, as I now understand, simply healing me. She simply sat me down on a chair and began walking around me like this, doing something with her hands. She said, "Close your eyes and don't peek." But I was curious. I peeked, sat there thinking, what is she actually doing? She was waving her hands around me like this. I thought, how is this possible? I had visited so many doctors, my brain was thinking. I had visited so many doctors. How could this even be possible? That she would now wave her hands around me and something normal would happen to me. I sat there and even smiled inwardly, thinking, no, this is some kind of something from an unreal world. And I sat through that session, feeling absolutely nothing at all. I left and thought, should I keep going to her or not? I thought, well, some nonsense. And I fell asleep with that thought, thinking I wouldn't go back to her. I won't go. I'll keep searching for something else. I woke up in the morning, and an inner voice said, "Go. Just go." My mind said, "I don't want to. It's all nonsense. I won't go there." But the inner voice insisted, "Go." It was as if something inside me was saying, "You must go there. Trust, go." And I went to her, then again, every other day, a second time. Again, the same thing. She again walked around me, waved her hands. Nothing happened. I felt nothing again. But the second time, I left with the same feeling that I wouldn't go back there again. And more time passed. Again, the inner voice, "Go." And so I went a third time, thinking, well, I'll go one last time. If absolutely nothing happens now, I definitely won't go back to this woman. This is some kind of scam. And so I came the third time, and she said to me, "You already feel better, don't you? Your energy is starting to accumulate. Can you feel it?" And I looked and remembered that indeed, it somehow felt easier to climb the stairs. We lived on the third floor. I had a stroller. My child was little. I had to carry that stroller up to the third floor. I thought, oh, I actually did pull the stroller up more easily. And I began analyzing. I had become slightly lighter. And so, after that, I kept going to her. I completed all 10 sessions, and she truly restored my energy. I healed, energetically healed. I understand now it was an energetic illness. It wasn't a disease on the physical plane. It was simply energetic exhaustion. That is, as she explained to me, there was a breach in my field. And from certain stresses, emotional experiences, well, there were specific moments in my life when I truly suffered deeply. And, essentially, from that, a breach occurred in my field, and energy simply leaked out. A person can do this to themselves, as I now understand through the matrix. I have such strong energies that I myself can breach my own field. Not someone else, even me. I myself can do it. If I think negatively or dwell negatively, I have the moon, for those who know the method, in the third eye. And I can, in a way, self-program myself. This has always been clear to me since childhood, that I truly either attract things through my thoughts, or I can, essentially, even harm myself if I concentrate and dwell for too long on something negative. And so, in this way, I first encountered the diagnosis that we have an energetic field, that it can be breached, that we do not end at physics. Yes, only at physics. That we, apparently, have some energetic shell which can be breached, and you will simply feel a great lack of your physical, energetic strength. And thus, in this way, I first became acquainted with bioenergetics.
Thank you very much for this story, because even for people unfamiliar with the concepts of energetic field, bioenergetics, I think we all know when these crisis moments arrive in life, when we suddenly lose ourselves. And for women, this often happens during motherhood, when suddenly there is much time to be alone with oneself and reevaluate some life orientations.
Yes, yes, yes.
And this call of the soul, we work in psychology, we work with archetypes. There is this so-called hero's journey, which every person undergoes in their life, and one of its earliest stages is the call of the soul. And essentially, at that time everything was very material, yes, and talk about the soul was rare,
Yes,
especially during
the
Soviet
conveyor
times.
belt.
Yes, the conveyor. There is some clear path you study, you grow, here is your profession. Back then, there was the notion that you received a profession for life, and you stuck with it. And this was considered some kind of sign of success, that everything in life was fine. This state of being lost is very familiar to many, and for many, it becomes a turning point. I understand that in your life, this was some kind of stage that divided everything into before and after. And it's very interesting how exactly did your calculations and the method
Yes.
itself come
After
about.
I began searching for myself, because truly I began searching for myself, after this woman opened for me, after all, the path and understanding that bioenergetics exists, I began searching. I began seeking practices, knowledge, which lead not to physics, but to metaphysics, as I already said, to bioenergetics, to mysticism. And fortunately, I lived in Moscow. And at that moment, many masters came to Moscow yogis, and people already practicing Reiki. By then, it was gradually spreading, after the perestroika period. After the perestroika period, it was around 1996. And from 1996 onward, I began my path in bioenergetics. That is, I first completed the master level of Reiki simply as a Reiki user, as a Reiki adept. Then I completed the master level of Reiki. That is, when I fully immersed myself in the world of bioenergetics and the world of Reiki, I had such a clear understanding, feeling, that I had come home. Here was my soul, which had been calling, searching, guiding me along the path of service to people and the world. And I immediately decided for myself that I would become a Reiki master, that I would serve people, that I would heal, that I would engage in these practices. And indeed, my fate unfolded this way. The stars aligned. My purpose very quickly I became a Reiki master. And from 1996 onward, my path began specifically developing in metaphysics, in mysticism, in bioenergetics, in various practices of self-knowledge and self-improvement. I was a student of Lyudmila Golubovskaya. She was my first teacher on karma. She organized the New Consciousness Center. I attended this center for a very long time and was, well, I took her courses on the laws of karma. And from those times, I became acquainted specifically with the karmic law, that there exists the law of cause and effect, that all events in life have a primary cause. And from that moment, I truly, purely, one could say professionally, began studying the laws not only of energetic laws, but also karmic laws, cause and effect. Probably, from this point, the path into the matrix truly began, because the matrix itself is also karmic, meaning it also speaks of the laws of karma, it also speaks of the laws of the soul, and the laws of cause and effect, about what we come here with. And therefore, of course, initially my path was within my own understanding of the law of karma. Within this karmic teaching, I began specifically with the New Consciousness Center. My first teacher was Lyudmila Golubovskaya, and she remains my first teacher on the laws of karma. I read many philosophical books, whatever was available at that time during the Soviet era. I attended many interesting classes. A very strong activation occurred within my own metaphysical nature. Within the mystical, such an activation was produced by a practice such as firewalking. For me, this was the first metaphysical, powerful experience. When I understood that if you believe in higher forces, if you connect with the elements of nature, if you discard your ego, discard your selfhood, and internally you are connected solely with this divine part of yourself, then fire will not burn you. This was an absolutely astonishing phenomenon in life, which so strongly activated my faith in God and faith in the fact that a person is the creator of their own destiny. And everything depends on us, how much we either destroy ourselves or develop and elevate ourselves and climb our own certain mountain peak called life, destiny named evolution.
That is, remaining in fear, it is impossible to trust and move forward anywhere, it turns out. But this is such a very radical method.
Yes, such a, method, according to the 16th Code of Destiny, probably, because I have the 16th energy in my social purpose. It needed, something like that to shake me inside, so that I could finally trust, so that I could finally walk the path of metaphysics, the path of God, the path of discovering myself in the divine world. And this moment strongly activated me, and I began delving even deeper into metaphysical laws, specifically into the possibilities of human nature. Because when fire does not burn you, it is truly astonishing. Yes, some miracle. It is simply astonishing. The most real miracle that you experience. Yes, that you experience in such a physical experience. And during those times, besides the laws of karma and Reiki, working with people, I began studying tarot cards. I became very fascinated by the Karta Ram system because it gave me, specifically, a path, let's say, first, the development of intuition, answers to my inner questions, because I always loved asking myself the question, why is this happening to me? Why did this or that person appear in my life? What can I do better in this or that situation? I was always interested in how cards, connected to my subconscious, gave me such answers. Moreover, I wasn't interested in what would happen to me later, or when I would get married, figuratively speaking, when some event would occur for me. Well, women often ask, when will I get married? The most common question. Or what will happen to me in a year, in 2? I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in what I could do better so that I would have this or that in a year or 2. Or what I could do to tell a girl how to get married, or how to open up to her partner and attract a resonant soul. That is, I was interested in tarot cards from the perspective of the future. I already began understanding then that a person is the creator of their own future, that there are many options. Many options. Fate has variability, and one only needs to ask, what can I do within myself? How can I change to obtain this, and this? Well, the best, let's say, development of one's destiny, the best development of one's life events. And this moment, what can I do? How can I work on myself to heal and improve my destiny? This became, probably, the key moment leading me to begin thinking about some kind of methodology. I was always also interested in palmistry. I studied astrology. I generally tried to study sciences about destiny in parallel, but I cannot say that I delved deeply into them. It was somehow, apparently, so much, well, not that it wasn't mine, but I didn't need to delve deeply into them, because I needed to open the matrix. I had a completely different purpose. If I had gone into astrology, I might have become a wonderful astrologer. Or if I had gone into palmistry, I would have become a wonderful palmist. But those were already established sciences. I needed to open a completely new methodology. The matrix was my destiny, my purpose, and my child. And therefore, of course, those sciences somehow slowed me down and didn't let me go further. That is, they suddenly at some point seemed to me, simply didn't let me go. I would say it that way. Or it was enough, or something like that. Somehow at some point I stopped feeling resonance with them, and I left them, and again began working more with tarot, with the major arcana. And there are 22 energies, 22 major arcana, tarot cards. And I knew perfectly well, and, by the way, after some time I became a wonderful tarologist. I had consultations for external Lilith. I consulted. I was a Reiki master, conducted healing sessions. I consulted on tarot. I taught tarot. I taught Reiki, conducted initiations. Such was my main practice for a long time. But at a certain moment, I clearly understood that tarot was some kind of key to something greater. It began coming to me in my deep meditations. When I immersed myself in meditation, this understanding began coming to me. That there are the minor arcana of tarot cards, and there are the major arcana of tarot cards. The minor arcana show, such momentary, immediate events, the nearest events happening to you in the near future. Well, for example, they might occur within 3 days, or are happening now, or in the nearest month. And they do not influence your destiny so strongly. They depend on your more momentary perceptions. Well, let's say, desires, or aspirations, or energies. How do you direct them? But there is something over which you have no control, like a higher divine force. And these are the major arcana, 22 energies, which act as divine force, over which you have no momentary control. And here I wondered, how is this possible? If you have no control over them, then what is this? What are these 22 energies? What kind of force is this? And in my meditations, it began coming to me that this is the force of God, that this is the divine manifestation of divine destiny, fateful energy, divine energy, universal energy, diffused in space, as the laws of the universe. And I started from this. This thought so powerfully absorbed me, it so inspired me, that I understood there is a certain force, and we constantly have, every day we can have dealings with it, we can interact with it, or come into contact with it, but we do not know this. And I asked myself, how to do this? How to come into contact with these 22 energies, with this force daily? How can one decipher, decode this mystery, this force? How can each person comprehend it? Well, for example, for me and for other people. And I understood that the only thing connecting us, since these are numbers, you see, 22 energies, these are numbers. I thought, what exactly connects us with numbers? What affects our destiny from the perspective of numbers? And that's all. And the answer came to me. Here it is, our birth date, which flows into the 22 energies. 22 energies flow into our birth date. All this intersects. And therefore, I thought that precisely the human passport according to these 22 energies serves as the starting point and is our birth date. When I began thinking so intensely about this, first, I simply mapped the birth date onto the 22 energies. Well, that is, I took my own personal date, or someone else's, and simply distributed it across the 22 energies. I understood. For example, I was born on the onest. I am a magician wonder worker. For example, the 5th month, that's the Hierophant teacher, meaning I have the energy of both a pioneer and a teacher. I added up the birth year, analyzed all these numbers, and that's how it all began. That is, first with my own matrix. The correspondence of 22 energies simply with the birth date, with my universal passport under which I was born. And all this became the starting point. Then more followed. Then sacred geometry began coming to me. Since I studied physics, metaphysics, this is the star, yes? Yes. What is it called? Well, this? Yes, this is the matrix itself, a square within a square, from which the matrix itself is constructed. That is, a direct square, a diagonal square. These are like two repositories of destiny, which store our karmic laws. Why, for example, did I take and arrange the birth date precisely according to this sacred geometry? After all, there are actually many forms of sacred geometry in the universe. Many different stars, many different geometric regular figures that constitute sacred geometry. Why did the octagonal star become the star of the matrix?
Please tell us, why specifically the octagon? Specifically this figure?
There are actually many figures in sacred geometry. Why specifically the octagon? Because, let me show you my little book. Because a square within a square, the state of the square of 4 is a repository, a keeper of knowledge. And this matrix, square within a square, stores knowledge. Knowledge of 2 laws, the law of our personal karma and the law of ancestral karma. That is, the figure of the octagon itself, with 8 angles, with 8 karmic tasks. That is, it is as if karma in action. And therefore, the octagon clearly reflects the karmic law. 8 laws of karma, 8 angles of the octagon, and essentially, that is how it was born. The matrix of destiny, with 8 central laws of karma and 8 karmic tasks of the magical sacred octagon. Of this square. In the square, as I already said, the square structure is static. It is the most powerful, fundamental, supportive energy, which as if encloses 4 walls, but the most powerful, supportive, it preserves. It is like a guardian of karma. And therefore, 2 squares preserve our karmic tasks, personal tasks and ancestral tasks. It is not just by chance that we came specifically into this family. Entered our ancestral system, the father's lineage and the mother's lineage. Our matrix also informs us about all of this.
And how did this image come to you? People say, sometimes it came to someone in a dream. To someone else it appeared visually or was discovered through mathematical calculations. How?
I certainly didn't have to wait for the matrix in dreams. The matrix came to me through my practices, through my meditative questions and answers from higher forces. By that time, I was already meditating quite intensively, or powerfully, or, let's say, regularly, on a consistent, practical basis. And answers came to me for my inner questions. That is, I would sit in meditation, ask questions, and answers would come to me. I could write down these answers, by hand, or simply clearly understand that here it was the answer to my request. Or signs would later come from the universe through people, through some information. Therefore, I clearly understood that here was the answer to my question. But here, it was a clear understanding that precisely this way, the birth date must be arranged into the octagonal matrix. That is, a very clear formula simply came how to arrange everything according to the square within a square.
But the calculation system, there is quite complex, very multi-layered. So tell us about it. How did you arrive at it? How was it formed?
It wasn't formed immediately. At first, it simply unfolded. The birth date was distributed across the matrix, and that was the most primary calculation. Indeed, even a child can calculate the primary matrix calculation. It is simple enough. Then, deeper exploration of the matrix followed. As I began studying the matrix generally, consulting a large number of people, delving deeper into the method, into my inner meditations and questions about the method. And, of course, people themselves helped me. The consultations with people themselves. Because whenever a person has a question, there is always, for the healer or the consultant, an answer available for that person. There is a question, there is an answer. And therefore, when people's questions arose, I began seeing them specifically within the matrix. And thus, gradually, level by level, the matrix began revealing itself to me. Plus, of course, my sacred travels to different countries of the world, to different points on the planet, where artifacts have been preserved, where ancient sites remain, because precisely there the matrix resonated very strongly, responded vividly. As the guardian of karma, the matrix as a karmic repository, it revealed itself very well precisely in those countries where the law of karma has been understood and believed in since ancient times. That is, all of our Asia, all of Buddhism, Hinduism, those countries that preserve precisely the understanding and philosophy of the laws of karma. Of course, I traveled extensively through India, Nepal, Tibet, Thailand. At first, these were my solo travels. Then with my companion, my husband, my spiritual comrade, my spiritual partner, with whom we united in 2012, with Andre, and we traveled together extensively to various countries. Well, and books have been written. I wanted, taking the opportunity, to present, for example, Travels, Mystical Journey Through India. Then this precisely describes my mystical travels. Journey through the codes of destiny in Nepal, where, when I independently set off into the Himalayan mountains, walked with my guide Raja through the mountains, through the 22 energies, through the 22 codes. I performed my ascetic practice, my spiritual practice in solitude, only with my Nepalese guide, and performed all kinds of meditations, prayers according to the energies. And, of course, more and more information was revealed to me. It's not so simple. When you think about the matrix, the calculations seem simple. But in reality, my spiritual searches, my entire spiritual path, all my meditative practice, all my healing practice with people, deepened the matrix calculations and revealed new layers over time. Not immediately, not overnight, but precisely step by step, let's say.
Can it be said that this process is still ongoing? That is, the matrix is still deepening, because despite new books appearing, new topics with which the matrix works.
Precisely this indicates that the matrix is alive. It cannot stop at any single stage. It is living knowledge, representing life itself, destiny itself. How could it stop? We are always in development. Every person is always in development. Life is always in cycles and in development. Accordingly, we can never stop. And the matrix, in its development, in its understanding, deepening, in its revelation and transformation, also does not stop.
But despite this, there is a very clear calculation algorithm. Now, there is already such an electronic calculator, I've seen it. Well, I also tried to make one myself, yes, but up to a certain level it is possible. Then you begin to get lost in the numbers, and generally it seems very complicated. And so, for an ordinary person unfamiliar deeply, well, generally it is quite difficult to do.
Yes, and then one needs to turn, probably, to a consultant, to people who work with the matrix, who have trained in my school as consultants to calculate their own matrix and not get lost, as you said, in these calculations, and to receive a qualified first layout of their own matrix, their own destiny.
If I simply make a calculation, read something about it in a book, well, it seems this information is insufficient. It is somehow primary. But to understand what to do with it next, already a professional consultation is needed.
This information, which is in books, which you see and read online, it, as I call it, introduces you into the matrix. It initially introduces a person into the matrix, and it either resonates with the person or it does not. And if the matrix resonates, of course, it is better to continue along the path of deepening into the matrix. This is either a consultation, and you receive initial practices during the consultation for working through your personal matrix, for changing your destiny, for its transformation into the positive, into creation, into healing, or else come for training. For those who want to study the matrix even deeper and deeper, and already begin using it, of course, we welcome you to training and are very glad for our students to whom the matrix resonates and who want to delve deeper into it.
Please tell us, what is the uniqueness of the methodology? How does it differ perhaps from astrological calculations? There too, stars and planets are calculated, destiny exists, and there is karmic astrology.
Yes, of course. What makes the methodology unique? It is unique in that it is simple in its primary calculations and, generally, in learning. Of course, if we speak of deep karmic astrology, one needs to study for several years to become a consultant, to understand it, to study all the subtleties. In the matrix, one does not need to study so much. That is precisely how it differs. It is precise, but sufficiently simple in its initial calculations. Later, of course, one can delve into its further depths of the matrix, but these are already additional courses. But the primary courses, essentially, in calculations are sufficiently simple. They remain quite simple and accessible. That is, people can learn from any level. And even if they are not adepts of metaphysics, energetics, esotericism, even if they are simply people who want to understand themselves, training in the matrix of destiny will also suit them. And we even had moments when school children studied, came together with parents. Parents requested, "Let my son or my daughter sit in the classes." We said, "Well, okay, let them sit, well, listen a little, and then maybe leave." But the children, the most amazing ones who came, they did not leave. They listened from beginning to end to the entire matrix, clearly wrote everything down, calculated. Already began typing their own school friends according to the matrix. It was very interesting to observe children who came for training and who, in principle, very quickly and easily absorbed the knowledge of the matrix of destiny, knowledge of energy.
I think this is such a deep need of every person, probably of all humanity. And I remember in childhood, this is also felt self-knowledge. And when there is some system, that's why people love horoscopes so much, including children, school children, read, "What's in my horoscope today?" Because, well, there is a certain need to somehow know and understand oneself. And when there is some system with which one can compare, learn something more about oneself, it, of course, is very captivating. So I think it finds such a living response in many people.
I also wanted to add regarding the uniqueness of the method, in that the method contains no fatalism. Precisely the method revealed to the world the understanding that destiny is multivariant, that our choice determines where we turn the course of our river of destiny. And therefore, a person here becomes a wonder worker, or becomes a creator, becomes a co-creator. And precisely this showed, revealed this understanding, precisely the matrix opened it. That is, it provided the opportunity. Even if you have some negative aspects of energy, it provided the opportunity and revealed practices for working with this, what to do. That is, it gave not only the calculation methodology, it gave a very powerful, strong, highly effective practical part. That is, the method's practice, work on oneself. Every person coming to the method can change their destiny through working with the matrix, through working with their energies in the matrix of destiny. Working on themselves. This is another main distinctive feature and uniqueness, and advancement of the matrix of destiny method.
That is, there is no such fatality that if I have such energy in my chart, then that's it. I must suffer my whole life.
Yes.
That is, I remain with the same leading energy, for example.
But I can transform it. I can develop within its corridor. I can, yes, remain in the negative. But I have a choice. I have free will. I have my time. There is the flow of life. That over time I can transform and make my life better and turn my destiny, let's say, toward creation.
That is, after all, this is primarily a system created so that everyone can understand more about themselves and within themselves, and after that, help others.
Yes, definitely.
I very often see such announcements on social networks. I will teach you the matrix of destiny, and in a week you will earn 100,000 per month and consult a huge number of people. Well, how possible is this? To start consulting, for example, without having understood and without having become familiar how it works in one's own life?
The point is, yes, a person runs ahead of the entire planet, has already learned something,
To immediately share with the whole world.
and already wants to share with the whole world, or, let's say, to earn their first million. It doesn't matter. In any case, it is, of course, a praiseworthy desire, on one hand, but in quotation marks somewhere, because it is very important in any healing, or in any, let's say, mentorship, since the matrix and consulting is, to some degree, mentorship, first to become this mentor within oneself, to become this teacher, to become this person who can share, one must grow an inner quality within oneself, to share this already mature quality of love, compassion, mercy, acceptance with the world, with people. Then one can pull up a person who came to them with a problem, at least to their own level, share what they have inside themselves. And the person, taking this, perceiving it, will begin to grow within themselves, first on the energy of the healer or consultant, but only later will they begin to generate their own energy, if they want to, and will begin to make correct further actions and choices. But if the person themselves has not grown within, the consultant themselves, and they do not have, let's say, these qualities within themselves, how can they pull out a person who came to them with the same problem? That is, it is the same as a lifebuoy for a drowning person. Figuratively speaking, if you have no lifebuoy and you don't know how to swim, you cannot pull anyone out, any person who now needs help. Therefore, this is only such external theatricality or external such some kind of paradigm that I received knowledge, I can immediately consult, or I can immediately earn money. But in reality, it is not so. And the person themselves will actually receive many lessons. Whether they understand it or not, of course, is their own choice. But they will receive many lessons from destiny, from the external world, from the universe, from people, even from their own soul, if they are not ready and they went there. It is very important internally, of course, the quality of maturing healing within oneself, cultivating this quality of bringing good to people. It is impossible to save, as I say again, if you have not saved yourself.
Then the question arises, how long does one need to study? And must all your students necessarily become consultants and want to be consultants, or can one simply come primarily to understand for oneself?
Yes. Everything is correct.
How long does one need to study to become a consultant?
But in fact, there are certain conditions we have. They can be read on our website, How to Become a Consultant of the Method. There are simply school rules, of course, for our students, But it is not several years, I assure you. One can even master such a profession within a year. I won't say within 2 or 3 days, yes, or even a week, but within a year you can reach a level, in principle, of a person who understands quite well and the method, who consults other people.
Probably, there should also be some inner life experience accumulated by them.
Yes, of course. It also depends on the person themselves, because all people come to the method at different levels of their own spiritual development. Perhaps someone is already a psychologist or numerologist, or consults people in some other system, acts as a coach, for example, in coaching. Well, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that the person already has experience of interaction, working with people. If a person came completely from zero and is only beginning to understand themselves, then, of course, they have a longer path to consulting because one must first understand oneself, raise oneself, begin learning to interact with people, and only then begin consulting professionally. But we, in principle, offer a person already at the initial stages of training to try consulting. Being a professional consultant and trying to consult, these are, as it were, two different levels in our school. When a person already receives a diploma, certificate of a professional consultant, and passes it, they pass supervision, an exam. That is, they receive our verification, approval, issuance of the certificate itself. These are already people at a professional level. But when a person is only studying, they also need to learn on someone correctly. They need to learn to calculate the matrix, to try on relatives, on themselves, on all their friends, close ones. This is wonderful, and this is encouraged. But this is not professional consulting. This is the person learning. And they honestly say, I am learning, let me calculate you. And I can tell you something interesting about yourself.
You mentioned that psychologists come to you, astrologers, that is, the matrix can be combined with any other system, knowledge. How does this combine?
Yes, it does not contradict any other methodologies, but on the contrary complements your basic knowledge. If you, for example, are already a specialist in some field of work with people, then the matrix will only add to you some possible moments or angles or slices of knowledge which you lacked, and therefore you can supplement your arsenal of knowledge, also with the matrix. And I think it will complement all this for you and fill you with some interesting new meanings. I think you will definitely find in the matrix. Such people will definitely find in the matrix for themselves precisely what they came here for.
Now everything tends towards such wholeness. And I see that people are studying, and psychologists study different directions, whoever is engaged in something, and people continue studying now and somehow strive toward this wholeness. Can the matrix help me? I am a dance movement therapist. I work with the body, consulting. And how can the matrix, for example, help in my dance movement history?
It can help very beautifully, because everything is psychosomatic. We, in principle, have some bodily problems, blocks. When we tense up, when we react to something in a certain way, if we have a strong reaction, and it is, for example, negative, it may, for example, tighten our throat, or cause a spasm in the scapular area. Or even if some theme is more related to our fears, survival, then it will be the lower body signaling us about our certain reactions to certain events, eventfulness. And the matrix is energy, which is connected with these events. And therefore, studying energy, we study language and the body, including. That is, we study the psychosomatic part according to energies. Matrices, we can clearly calculate it according to the health map. And we call our health map the psychosomatic map. When we understand that our reactions to the world are connected with our body, And you, as a body movement therapist, can study, for example, this matrix. Study the health map, and it will help, seeing, for example, certain blocks already in a person's body. You can calculate what their energetic code is. And through these energies, through understanding him, how he can behave according to these energies, guide him towards certain reflections, towards certain thoughts. Not just work through in the body, but also talk about his own feelings, about his own reactions and behavior in certain situations.
Very interesting, yes. I am not familiar with the health map. Yes, I haven't examined it. It looks like I've been familiar for a long time. But somehow, yes, it didn't occur to me to try to combine this knowledge. Thank you very much. That the body stores history, our entire history, life, our history, this is absolutely certain. I fully agree with this.
Yes. You can also, as a body movement therapist, very often labor-related histories surface. You see this in the body. Through the matrix, calculate the codes of the lineage, clearly his codes for 7 generations of the father's lineage, for 7 generations of the mother's lineage. You can also simply help him work through the body, these or those energies.
That is, it helps to see more complete cause and effect connections. Well, this interests me precisely from the perspective of such help.
Yes. Of course. Now I clearly imagine how this overlays onto our bodily symptomatology. That is, precisely, as I said again, our chakras, the chakra system, the organ system in the chakra areas, the body system generally, how they react to energy, to situations in which precisely the body works on energies. Essentially, the matrix launches situations according to energies, and a person reacts bodily. And analyzing all this, in general, results in such a picture of the world, more holistic, in which one can already influence more, let's say, at different levels, at levels of awareness and, as a consequence, at the level of physics, at the level of healing the physical body.
Yes, this is very interesting. I will try to study and understand the health map. Now, there are many different matrices appearing on social networks. They are called differently. I see that there the same octagon is at the base, but the descriptions differ, and the calculations too. How do you relate to this? And to the fact that, apparently, people interpret the matrix in their own way, how permissible is this at all?
Permissible, yes. Well, I want to say that the popularity of the method leads to all sorts of current variations of the matrix. Well, apparently, this is such an inevitable process, which is impossible in our time. Such a turbulent informational saturation, impossible to somehow stop or predict where it will develop. I look at this, of course, with acceptance, but I absolutely clearly and precisely understand that a person can interpret energies through their own experience, but changing the calculations of the matrix is impossible, because then the matrix itself will drift, its own algorithm, its own meaning. That is, it has a clear arithmetic formula, which cannot be changed. And changing this clear arithmetic formula will, of course, lead further to absolute inaccuracies and, essentially, lead people into dead ends in an illusory world. But if a person does not change the formula, strictly follows the positions which I brought into the world through this matrix, then, of course, they can interpret their own experience as they see it, as they received it. It is their right. But changing, I want to say again, the calculation, the exact formula, what positions the matrix is in, this cannot be done, because otherwise, as it were, that sacredness and that precise meaning of destiny embedded in the method, which is that very unique formula that works, is lost.
Thank you very much. Please tell us, what topics does the matrix work with?
Yes, this is such a multifaceted question. It actually works with all topics that concern us ourselves, But still, I will try to outline the main ones. First, it is purpose. That is, when we ask ourselves the question, why were we born on this earth? What is my soul truly destined for? What is truly resonant for me? These are all topics that clearly designate, directly, like the Matrix navigator. It also illuminates partnership topics. There is such a powerful training as the compatibility matrix. That is, we examine compatibility in partnership. We say that there are no incompatible couples, and we learn this paired diagnostics and generally paired interaction holistically. Also, of course, we illuminate in the topic and give a very powerful methodology for working through lineage, called the training 7 Generations of Lineage. There are similarly named books, like Matrix of Destiny and 7 Generations of Lineage. The topic, Parents and Children. You see, also the booklet, Parents and Children. In the method, we study bodily practices, work with the body, on psychosomatics, as I already said, all these methodologies. Financial. The most important question for many people. Yes, the financial topic is also illuminated in the Matrix, with wonderful trainings, meditations, and is also worked through, and the method helps achieve realization of well-being in this sphere.
And where should a person start who has just heard about the Matrix for the first time? It resonated with them. They are interested in understanding. Should they first buy a book or come to your courses, perhaps?
There are actually many paths of development, because one can buy a book and start with that. This is such a primary entry into the Matrix. One can undergo a consultation with our specialists, as I already said, according to the method, and receive a professional analysis of their own matrix of destiny. One can come for training. Training with us is conducted both in live meetings and retreats, and online training, and also by purchasing courses on our website.
That is, one can immediately come and receive some information, yes?
Yes, of course. And moreover, choose the level at which you are ready to perceive the matrix. From the very beginning, this is books, literature, and meditations, which you can purchase on the website before consultation and training.
Please tell us about the meditations. You mentioned them. What are they for? Is this practical work or auxiliary?
Well, precisely the meditations that came to me. These are meditations on the 22 energies, which change our symptomatology, our reactions, our karmic programs, which are recorded in our subconscious, from the minus of karma to the plus. This is precisely the methodology that helps us painlessly, in a very pleasant mode, work through our destiny minuses, our karma minuses. And therefore all meditations are recorded with very pleasant music, recorded in my voice. Divine poems and true formulas came to me, which were directed precisely toward working through all energy minuses from karma minus to plus. And, for example, you can also listen to a sample meditation on our website, which you will see in our advertising description, and go there, and form some initial impression of my meditations for yourself. Then you will familiarize yourself there with the list, a large list of meditations, because I am not only the author of the Matrix of Destiny method, but I am also the author of Healing Meditations, which I have been writing for over 20 years. The channel The Gift of Writing Meditations was opened to me, and I do this. And many people, even without knowing the method, simply love my meditations, heal only through meditations.
That is, meditation is such a tool, one of the main, for working with the matrix, yes?
Yes, it is one of the main tools, because when I began seeing how people's destinies unfold, I asked the higher forces the main question. I am fine, I will see this, but please give me a tool, how to change destiny, how to transform it, how to heal it through the method, through the matrix, through energy, and the universe. God, however you want to call it, my higher I, teachers of the Absolute, gave me this flow of amazing healing poems and meditations, which I recorded, created together with sound engineers, also talented people, whom, again, God sent to me. And together we created such a masterpiece as Natalia Ladini's Healing Meditation. And on the 22 energies, we have thematic meditations.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And to conclude our meeting today, I want to ask a couple more such questions. Are we truly creators of our own destiny? Or is there something predestined? How is this purpose? Do we ourselves create all this?
Yes, precisely. We have drawn such, let's say, a line through our entire conversation that we are creators, after all. Yes. And we put a period on this, yes, that we are creators of our destiny. Indeed. There is no fatum. The stories of people who write us feedback have proven this to us. How they changed their destiny, how they emerged from the most difficult situations of their lives. And this is amazing. This is inspiring. This gives even more such, powerful strength and desire to work for people, to develop this method so that it helps the world, helps each individual soul. Because we all truly want only one thing. We want to love. We want to live in peace and in creation. And only this, as they say, is needed by every living soul on the planet. And the method leads to this, to our evolution, to development, and to peace.
And then here is such a question, because now is precisely that time when we very much need support, faith that everything will be fine, because the world is very restless. Perhaps you could say a few more encouraging words, that indeed we will soon live in a world of love, happiness, and harmony.
Yes, once deep meditations came to me, once deep knowledge came to me in my meditations, that humanity will live through the path of transformation and will come to a golden age among the people of the planet. And this golden age will inevitably come, and it is actually on the threshold, and we are moving toward it. But before dawn, the night is darkest. Before dawn, all darkness is most active. And therefore, probably, this dawn is very close now. I believe in this. And I very much want to encourage our listeners, viewers, that we all should believe, because we create this reality ourselves. People themselves create what they think about, what they concentrate on. It is very important now to think that we are at a stage, yes, transformation is happening. Yes, we see and accept this. But we believe that we are creating a new future, that we will pass through this transformational corridor and emerge into the light, emerge into people's awareness, emerge into different relationships among people, build a completely different society of conscious people who will live not on energies of consumption, but on energies more of creation.
Thank you very much.
This is how I see the planet. And the method helps with this. And therefore we will be very glad to see everyone among our students, in my school, author of the method. And therefore, of course, I am very interested in the development of the method, and will gladly share my knowledge with everyone who comes to the method of the Matrix of Destiny.
Thank you very much.
And I thank you, Aliona, for such a wonderful conversation about the method and your interest in the method of the Matrix of Destiny.
Thank you.